Passwords kind of suck, but they're still the main way we protect ourselves online. Let's run through a few well-worn password rules that are just plain wrong. This is the Daily Charge. It's Wednesday, March 11th. I'm Roger Chang, and with me via Skype is our West Coast security reporter, Laura Hatala. Now, Laura, you're here to bust 3 well-worn rules for dealing with passwords. Let's run through them. What are we doing wrong?
Yeah, so for a long time, we've been told never write down your passwords. We've been told don't ever share your passwords and, just change them all the time just in case. Change your passwords and then you'll be safe. But there's some problems with all of these rules that kind of lead you to do passwords wrong.
So
So,
let's break it
write
down
down your
individually.
password.
Like the first one, like don't write down your password. It's funny, like when I read that, because like there's always a scene in a movie where someone's like snooping around someone's desk and they see the written password, and then you feel dumb because you've got the same kind of written password at your desk, or at least your friends do, not me.
Right.
So why is that counterintuitive? Because it seems to me like it would make sense to not have the written password down. Why does it make sense to actually write it down now?
So now we have way, way too many passwords to memorize. You're supposed to memorize your password and never write it down. But if you have a dozen, 100 passwords, how are you going to do that?
Mm,
So the only way to have unique passwords for every account, which is definitely what you should do, is to write them down. You can write them down physically and keep them locked in a file drawer or something. Don't put them on a sticky note under your keyboard. That's still a bad idea. But you can also use a password manager, which is a digital way of writing them down. Just any way that helps you actually have different passwords for every account is going to require writing them down.
right. And the idea that you don't share your account, you don't share your password, why does that make sense now? Or why does it not make sense?
Well, I mean, the fact is that we just do. We do share our accounts. We share our Netflix accounts. Or, if you have one Amazon Prime account, you're not going to get another, for your partner who lives in the same house as you. That doesn't make any sense. Banking is often similar. So the good news is that some services are helping you have shared accounts with separate passwords. So that's good. But other accounts don't do that. So you just have to be smart about it. The number one thing to do if you're going to share your passwords with someone is to not reuse that password somewhere else,
Mm,
because that limits the chance that you or your partner or whoever you're sharing with is going to accidentally give that password to hackers in a phishing scheme and then, pop open all those other accounts where you're reusing that password.
okay, so I can finally let my wife know what my passwords are.
Yeah, that's probably fine. Yeah. The other thing is that, we don't live forever. And at
Right.
the end of your life, you're going to want to have someone have access to your accounts.
That's a really
So
great
that's
point.
another thing.
Yeah,
People
yeah,
often have a conversation with older parents, like, tell me where you keep your passwords so that I can access things that I need to. Uh, yeah.
definitely. Okay, and then don't constantly change your password, which I'm a big fan of. But break it down. Why is this why does this not make sense?
So actually, there was this research about over 10 years ago showing that when people are required to change their passwords frequently, what they do is just add something really simple to the end of their other previous password.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty trivial to guess what the change is. So if your password has actually been stolen by hackers and all you do is like add a 1 or a 2 at the end, you're not really doing very much to secure yourself. So if you know that your password has been stolen in a data breach, you should change your password.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. But you should change it to something totally different. But if you don't have any reason to think your password has been stolen, you should leave it a complex, unique password that you're not using anywhere else. And that's definitely just the best security.
Got it. I really wish our corporate parents would hear that, because we have to change our passwords constantly here. Um,
Thank you.
we had Stephen Shanklin on Monday to talk about why passwords suck. You had a nice story yesterday about password managers. There's been a lot of interest with our readers and our listeners about password managers in general. Why don't you break down some of the key password managers options that are out there and sort of ones you'd recommend?
Yeah, I mean, so I think 1Password and LastPass are some of the best known. There's also Dashlane, and there's actually close to a dozen really good ones right now.
Mm,
And what makes them good is that they generate passwords for you that are unique. You don't have to think of a really crazy long password yourself. and stores them for you, and then makes it as easy as possible to log in from your phone, from your device, your laptop, whatever you're using. So you don't actually have to remember any passwords. And it's just kind of the best way to follow that rule of using a unique password for every site, because otherwise you'd have to be a robot or a computer to actually do that well.
All right. Want to talk about the big story today, and that is E3 potentially being canceled. We've got reports. Our sister site GameSpot has reported that the video game conference in Los Angeles is set to be canceled. They are scheduling a press conference for later today, I believe 9:30 a.m. Pacific. So we'll likely get official word then. But this is just the latest in a series of conferences and public events that have been canceled over concerns about coronavirus. Now, Laura, it's fortuitous that you're here because you actually attended one of the few conferences that went on despite the concerns. That is the RSA Security Conference, the one that happened to actually have someone with coronavirus attend. So share some of your perspective on that, and why it's important for some of these conferences to be canceled.
Yeah. So at the time of the RSA conference, there hadn't been any community transmitted cases in San Francisco. It didn't seem like it was an issue in San Francisco. But of course, when you bring, 10, 20, 30,000 people into the same place from all over the world, that increases the chances of transmission. And that seems to be what happened. According to Bloomberg, one of the people who had COVID-19 while at the conference got sick on the last day of the conference and had to be put into a medically induced coma more recently. So it was
Mm-hmm.
quite serious. So knowing that someone at the conference was, just about to be symptomatic, that's pretty worrying when I look back. And I'm pretty sure that everyone who attended the conference is also, reassuring themselves. I know I washed my hands a lot. I know it's unlikely that I contacted this one person, but it's still pretty disconcerting to know that that possibility is out there.
Absolutely, and I think when Mobile World Congress, that phone trade show in Barcelona, it got canceled. There were a lot of critics who said, this is a bit of an overreaction. I think a lot of folks who made the decision to pull the trigger on canceling these conferences are probably breathing a sigh of relief, knowing that the worst case scenario pretty much happened at RSA. And so you can imagine this is going to continue to be a thing. Conferences like Google I/O are being canceled. Apple's WWDC is just a few months. We don't know what's going on with that, but I suspect that'll get canceled as well. So it's just sort of the latest in this string. And just bring back to the sort of video game world, like E3, there were some questions about sort of the value of E3, as it were. Sony had already said they were planning to pull out of the conference completely to give their PlayStation 5 a bit more of its own limelight. And Microsoft has always kind of traditionally held a separate event. And so, Google had a big presence with Stadia there last year, but it wasn't actually at the show. It was sort of offsite. So there's been a lot of questions about the value of E3 even before the coronavirus concerns hit. But obviously, paired with these fears and just sort of the need to be cautious about things, it does make a lot of sense for E3 to get canceled. So
yeah, it's just part of the huge impact of this disease, that not only are people really getting sick, and it's scary to see, whether or not we can contain it, but there's this huge economic impact on businesses that are canceling these major events.
Definitely. All right. So as always, we want to turn to the live audience at this point of the show and crowdsource the rest of our content. For those of you out there on YouTube and Periscope, have you had any lost password horror stories? What are your preferred methods of password management? What are your thoughts about E3 and whether or not this is a show that should have been canceled? BVG, what are folks talking about?
We actually are learning that there's a lot of Dashlane users in the chat today on YouTube, which I find interesting. Not to rule out LastPass, 1Password, and 1,000 and other different ones. The one that caught my eye, though, and I want to give the award of the day to our YouTube friend Will Berry, who says, use the Wu-Tang name generator for your password. Laura, is that a good idea?
I don't know exactly what that is, but I know that there are some kind of approaches that's more like a password recipe, and that helps you kind of use something about the website to create a unique password that follows a pattern across all your accounts. And that's fine. I would call that perhaps adequate, but it isn't. I mean, some accounts are gonna fall through the cracks. You're still gonna reuse an account or a password here or there. You're gonna forget about, what your recipe means when you get to some random website or a service that you have to use for work. It's fine, but generally a password manager is a better system.
Thank you for that input, Dreifer Unfortunable. That is apparently your official Wu-Tang name, according to the Wu-Tang name generator. So if anybody needs a new password right now, that one's taken. I'm going to go ahead and run through my name. Anybody out there still watching and listening, use the Wu-Tang name generator, put it in the chat, tweet at us. I want to hear what your Wu-Tang name is. And we'll come back to this time and time again. As we keep going through the chat to fish out some more questions and comments from all you wonderfully lovely people, let me remind you the important news of the day is that today is Douglas Adams' birthday.
Oh.
42. And before we move any more forward, I did want to address that we got this really great email or voicemail, from our friend Andy, who wanted to talk about dongles coming off yesterday's show when we had Shankland on. So this is a good time, and let's go ahead and have a listen.
Hi guys, loved your piece on security today. Could you please do a comparison of the best dongles and the prices and stuff like that? Because this is something I really want to do. Okay, my name's Andy. You do a great job. Love you. Keep it up.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah,
love you too, Andy.
I did actually ping Stephen Shanklin about this, and Laura, feel free to weigh in afterwards. But his suggestion was the for you to look into Yubico YubiKeys and the Google Titan keys. I don't have the prices, so I don't know, Laura, if you could help me with that. But he explains that these are probably the best models because they have active software development and security programs. And Google has sort of an open source key software program that's great for transparency, extra scrutiny, and external contributions. So that's why he likes Titan in particular. Alfred mentioned, just for convenience sake, using your phone as a security key is a good option. But right now, as far as I understand, I think Android has kind of a leg up on being able to use it more. Google's actually integrated some of the stuff into Android, whereas Apple is, while they intend to, I think they're a little bit behind in terms of getting into iOS. Laura, anything else you want to add on the security key question?
Yeah, using your phone as your security key is like really promising in the future. We're not there yet where you can use it consistently across all your accounts. I use Yubico brand YubiKey, and it's easy and fine. I think a lot of the price differences among these have to do with whether they can work remotely, whether they can work with mobile, or use NFC to connect, or whether you just have to put it in the USB drive and tap it. So it's just about features, I think. And I think if you are starting out and just want to see how it works, you can get something less expensive. And if you are like, this is going to be my life now, you might want to opt for something that allows for a little more convenience.
I feel like for me, like having a Bluetooth option would be kind of a no-brainer as opposed to just plugging it in.
Yeah, I don't have it, and it is annoying because it's on my keychain, and the keys just kind of get in the way when I'm trying to tap it. They're like not allowing the security key to have free range of motion. So I definitely, if you can spring for that option, I would recommend it.
There you go.
Thanks, everybody, and thank you again, Andy, for including that question, keeping this conversation going here on the show. And thank you, Laura, for the look at the dongles. Next question we're taking is from Timothy. He says, for personal password habit, use passwords not in your own language. So if you speak English, make something in Spanish or French. Hackers use the English dictionary to brute force hack these. Laura, what's your perspective on this one? This is kind of a new perspective on me.
I think that's true. And I mean, hackers do use the dictionary, but if you use a phrase in English that's multiple unrelated words, then you're in really good shape. I mean, doing it in Spanish or another language that your keyboard allows would be next level. But, even in English, if you're using, 2, 3, 4 words in your passphrase, you're in good shape.
Excellent. Moving on, the next question is coming from Opinion, which I still think is a great name. I use Safe and Cloud Password Manager. Haven't talked about that one yet. Any opinions on this one? He's a big fan.
Yeah, I haven't tried that one yet, but I think it's great that there are so much competition in this space. It's something that people are going to be hopefully seeing more in their lives. I know that, for example, one password is hoping to expand not just into the enterprise space, so that people are using them at work and get used to them there, but also offering more personal accounts through those corporate accounts, so people can use them in their personal lives too. Password manager usage is pretty low right now. Like, I think Pew found that it was about 3% of people primarily use password managers to store all their passwords. And, since they're such a good tool, they definitely have some drawbacks. They're not always convenient, but they are the best way to be secure with passwords. If more people do encounter them, I think that's great.
Awesome. All right, we have about a little less than 10 minutes left. And there are some questions coming up about E3. Let's stay on the password topic for just a couple more minutes. Timothy also says the best method I have seen is in the Internal Affairs movie where they use the Morse code method. Is that a real thing?
Oh, is that Infernal Affairs?
Is it Infernal Affairs? I thought it was Internal Affairs.
No, it is. Well, Infernal Affairs, I think it's referring to the Hong Kong film.
Yep.
That is Infernal Affairs. There was a Morse code tapping thing. I don't know if that was a password. I think it was just a form of communication. Like he was tapping the cast of his broken arm, and it had and tapping in Morse code. That's kind of extreme. I don't know if like you could do Morse code as a password. I don't remember that scene if that was the case, but I don't know, Laura. Is that a thing? Can you like translate Morse code into a password? Is that even possible?
Well, so here's the thing. Morse code would probably just break down into 2 digits, right? Kind of like binary. It's dot dash. So I would say that's less secure, because then you're not trying to hide what your password is when you log in. You just want to have a complex password when you log in. So if you're using something essentially binary, then that really limits the number of characters you could have. And so I don't really see that working for passwords. It is a cool code.
It is, and also Infernal Affairs is an excellent movie. If you haven't watched it, you should definitely watch it.
I'm ashamed.
Scorsese remake was inferior in my opinion.
I'm ashamed. I've never seen it. I'm channeling my inner Alfred today. All right. Another one coming in says companies should incorporate single sign-on through their network to make it easier on the user. They only authenticate it again if used outside the magnet. Do any companies actually use that? I know we don't here at CBS, Viacom, whatever the heck we are these days. But is that a practice that might be starting to grow and increase?
Well,
yeah, actually we do.
We do use it
we
here,
do?
actually.
Okay. Apparently, then I'm outside of the loop. Inform me. Educate me.
Yeah, so we use Okta, but yeah, single sign-on is I mean, you have to connect your apps to the single sign-on service. So you can independently log into your own Twitter account or whatever, or you can connect it to Okta and just click on the Twitter icon on your Okta page, and it'll log you in automatically. That's how you log into Slack and other things. And it is a great service. And single sign-on in a corporate world is very secure. And you're trusting that corporate service with essentially the credentials for your accounts. There's something similar for regular people through Google or Facebook or or Apple too, that you can use your identity with those companies to log into your other accounts. The catch is that you have to feel comfortable telling Google, Facebook, or Apple or whoever what your other accounts are and what your credentials are. And some people don't feel comfortable with that. So that's just kind of the question there that people have to ask, would I be willing to do that?
Great conversation happening so far. Next one. Ryan says, I will definitely let my wife have access to my password manager should something happen to me, where a request gets sent, and if you don't reply, she can still get in. Because if not, she might miss a bill or something like that. Now, that's something that I have explored recently myself, is that, not to sound super morbid, but Postmortem access to accounts, things like Gmail, social networks. Laura, do you have any advice on that? And are there any inherent security risks when using this kind of a program?
So yeah, actually, a lot of the major services let you designate someone who will have access to your account in the event of your death. And it's a good idea to set those up. Not every account has it, though. So you could also consider finding a way to share those passwords with a loved one in the event of your death. There's lots of ways you could go about that. You could just put it in a locked drawer and tell them where it is, and they can find it if they need to. You could give them access to a special vault in your password manager in the event of your death. So that is definitely worth thinking about. Is security risks? I mean, in any situation where you're sharing your password, you do have to ask yourself, am I really comfortable sharing a password with this person, whether you're alive or dead? It's more relevant if you're alive. There are situations like domestic violence and abusive relationships where it is dangerous to share your passwords. And domestic violence advocates do kind of warn of the risks and try and work to help survivors of domestic violence extricate themselves from shared accounts with their abusers. So that is one thing to think about.
Excellent. And we have a question coming in from Periscope from Ron Gio. He says, is it true that it's better to use just all letters in place of numbers when constructing a password? What is the right recipe when trying to come up with a good password with simple alphanumeric and special characters?
Numbers are fine. And actually, a lot of password managers will help put numbers in a different color than letters, which is super helpful when you've got, the number 0 and the letter O, for example, or 1 and lowercase l. That can be really confusing. But the more characters, the better, because what you've got there is more complexity. And so if some hacker is trying to run through every possible password, adding more complexity would make that a lot harder.
Got it. I want to take another look at our YouTube chat, and coming in, we have some questions about E3 from our live audience. Timothy says, any canceled major conferences will definitely affect the local economy. Will this make companies change the meaning of a conference and move towards that kind of virtual conference? And being that it's gaming, how many do we think we're going to try to jump ship and do AR, VR streaming?
AR, VR streaming, I think we're ways off from that, just because if they streamed in AR, VR, the audience for that would be so tiny, it wouldn't really be worth it right now. But I do agree that remote streaming will probably be an option. I mean, all of this, if nothing else, this is really pushing folks to, one, work remotely, and two, for companies looking to make announcements or have a big presence at a conference, really look at web streaming, live streaming options for disseminating their announcements. So I expect, if Microsoft was expected to share a lot more news on Xbox, was it Series X? I keep forgetting the name. Xbox Series X? Yes. Xbox One or Xbox Series X? Anyway.
Series X.
Thank you. Sorry. So we're expecting details of that. I suspect Microsoft will still want to share those details. It'll just be through a different medium, through some sort of online broadcast. They were already doing this stuff online anyway, but they're probably just going to focus a lot more of their resources into making that presentation as really as palatable for online viewers as opposed to folks on the ground. So a lot more of that. I think there's a lot more thinking that's going to go into that presentation.
And in that same mindset, do we think this is going to have longer term implications? Are we going to see more and more splinter conferences where maybe instead of having a giant E3, we see more Nintendo Directs, or it's, would Sony do that kind of thing? We've seen this starting to happen, like here at CNET and Roadshow, we covered the Geneva Auto Show, which got canceled, and then every automaker went and broke out and did their own individual stream, because it's not that hard to do. The technology's there. Do we think that that's going to be kind of a new trend set going forward in lieu of these, hopefully we don't spend the rest of our lives in an epidemic, but, who knows?
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's something companies are going to seriously consider. The biggies like Sony, they can afford to go out and have their own event. They're going to hold a PlayStation 5 event sometime later this year. People are going to show up, guaranteed, right? I think it's more the smaller publishers, the independent game makers that would need something like E3 as a platform for them to make their announcements, right? Because that's what brings in the crowds. So there's still some value in having these conferences, but I agree. Like some of these bigger companies will start thinking more seriously about whether or not to do more of this stuff online. Like you said, Nintendo already does it with Nintendo Direct. They've always had a token presence at E3, but it hasn't really been a legit one. Like they do most of their announcements online or live streamed.
Yeah, it'd be interesting just to see where this trend kind of does take us. But thanks, everybody, for your input on the topic. Hopefully we'll have some more definitive answers and coverage and figure out how many of these streams that we're going to have to break out here at CNET just to pick them up all over again. So Before we go, I want to give a shout out to Attacker Insensitive, Simeon Philosophic, Thunderous Desperado, and Roger FYI. Your Wu-Tang name is Mercenary Chromatic.
Hey, all right, I'll take it.
And mine, I don't even know, is this even a word? I'm Believer Waiter Invasive. Okay, I'll take it. That's a good note to go out on. Laura, thanks again for making time for us today. Hopefully we get you back on again soon. Take care, stay safe, stay well, and we'll be back, everyone, tomorrow. Roger, go ahead and take us home.
Yep. Before we go, though, we'd ask you to please like, subscribe, share, and ring the bell if you wouldn't mind. If we missed something here today or you couldn't catch the live show and have a burning question, leave us a voicemail at 862-250-5173. If you want to learn more about today's topics, you can check the links to all today's stories in the description below. For The Daily Charge, I'm Roger Chang. Thanks for joining us.